Their bodies moved together with practiced intimacy, each touch promising the celebration that would follow dinner. Tyler's hand traced the curve of her spine as she pressed closer, her breath catching as his fingers grazed the sensitive spot below her ear. This was their rhythm, their private language of desire that no amount of money could buy. Suddenly a little girl said, "Daddy." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The champagne glass shattered against marble flooring the exact moment Tyler's perfect life exploded, when a 6-year-old flower girl looked up at him and whispered, "Daddy." Tyler Morrison had spent 3 weeks planning this night. Every detail calculated, every moment choreographed. The rooftop of Celestial in downtown Los Angeles belonged to him for the evening. All 42 tables, every crystal chandelier, the entire jazz quartet. At 42, Tyler owned the most successful luxury car dealership in Scottsdale, Arizona. He could afford perfection, and tonight, nothing would go wrong. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white tablecloths, while jazz saxophone melted through warm evening air. The city sprawled below them like scattered diamonds, witness to what should have been their crowning moment. Aaliyah Davis stepped onto the rooftop wearing a black dress that hugged her curves like liquid silk. At 29, she moved through the world with the confidence of a woman who'd fought for everything she'd earned. Her law degree from Emory hung in her Atlanta office, but tonight she was just Tyler's girlfriend, glowing under string lights and starshine. "You did all this for me?" she breathed, pressing her palm against his chest. The gesture sent electricity through his expensive suit, reminding him why he'd fallen so hard for this woman who treated his wealth like an afterthought. Tyler's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. "1 year ago, you walked into my showroom looking for a practical sedan. You left with a sports car in my heart." His voice dropped to that intimate register that made her pulse quicken. "I wanted tonight to be perfect." The live band played their song, the one that had been streaming through his Maserati speakers during their first kiss. Aaliyah's body melted against his as they swayed, her perfume mixing with desert air that had followed them from Arizona. Her lips brushed his ear as she whispered, "I love you too, Tyler Morrison." Their bodies moved together with practiced intimacy, each touch promising the celebration that would follow dinner. Tyler's hand traced the curve of her spine while she pressed closer, her breath catching as his fingers grazed the sensitive spot below her ear. This was their rhythm, their private language of desire that no amount of money could buy. Before dinner, Tyler murmured against her temple, "I arranged something special. A little girl will bring roses to each table. I thought you'd appreciate supporting local youth programs." Aaliyah's smile lit up her entire face. This was why she loved him. Beneath the luxury and success, Tyler saw the world through her nonprofit lawyer eyes. He understood her passion for helping kids who'd grown up like she had, fighting for every opportunity. The flower girl appeared like something from a fairy tale. Tiny hands clutched a basket of white roses, dark curls framing a face that belonged on magazine covers. She moved between tables with professional grace, placing flowers with careful precision. Tyler watched Aaliyah's face soften as the child approached their table. "These are for you," the little girl said, extending a perfect rose toward Aaliyah. Her voice carried a slight southern accent, familiar in a way that made Aaliyah's chest tighten. But then those innocent eyes shifted to Tyler. Recognition flickered across delicate features. Time slowed to impossible stillness as small lips parted and one word changed everything. "Daddy." The champagne flute slipped from Aaliyah's fingers. Crystal exploded against marble in a sound that seemed to echo forever. The jazz band played on, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated. Other diners continued their conversations while Tyler's world collapsed in the space between heartbeats. His jaw tightened until muscles jumped beneath skin. Color drained from his face as he stared at this child who couldn't possibly know him, couldn't possibly be calling him by that name. "I swear," he whispered, voice cracking like the shattered glass at their feet, "I didn't know. But DNA doesn't lie." And somewhere in the geometry of that little face, Aaliyah could see echoes of the man she loved. The same strong jaw, the same deep brown eyes that had convinced her to trust again. Have you ever had a perfect moment destroyed in seconds? When everything you believed turned out to be built on secrets. Drop a broken heart if you've been there. As a little girl's mother appeared in the doorway, Aaliyah's breath caught. Not because of the child, but because she recognized the woman, her college roommate Denise, who'd vanished without explanation 7 years ago. Some secrets travel 1,400 miles just to destroy you at the worst possible moment. 6 years earlier, Tyler had driven his rental car through Houston's rain-soaked streets with the taste of failure bitter in his mouth. The business deal that was supposed to expand his dealership into Texas had collapsed that afternoon. Lawyers, contracts, handshakes, all worthless when money talked louder than promises. The neon Lone Star Lounge sign buzzed and flickered against rain-soaked streets. Inside, whiskey burned away the sting of another failed business deal, while a green-eyed waitress moved between tables like she was dancing to music only she could hear. Denise Harper carried herself with the kind of grace that comes from surviving things most people couldn't imagine. At 23, she balanced trays with one hand while deflecting unwanted advances with practiced efficiency. Her smile never reached her eyes, but customers left bigger tips anyway, drawn to something they couldn't name. Tyler sat at the bar, expensive suit making him stand out among oil workers and truck drivers. He nursed bourbon and studied his phone, reading emails about opportunities that had evaporated like Texas morning dew. Another city, another disappointment. You look like you're drowning, Denise said, refilling his glass without being asked. Her voice carried honey and hurt in equal measure. Just trying to stay afloat. Tyler looked up, meeting eyes that seemed to see straight through his businessman facade. Long day. I know something about those. She leaned against the bar, momentarily ignoring other customers. You're not from here. Arizona. You. Everywhere and nowhere. Denise's laugh held edges sharp enough to cut. I'm good at disappearing. They talked until last call, words flowing like the whiskey that loosened tongues and lowered defenses. She told him about law school dreams derailed by family crisis. He confessed to loneliness that money couldn't cure, to sleeping alone in luxury hotels while building an empire that felt empty. When she finished her shift, neither suggested she leave. The chemistry between them crackled like live wire, dangerous and impossible to ignore. Tyler's hotel room became a sanctuary where two broken people could pretend, for one night, that touch could heal wounds that ran deeper than skin. She moved beneath him with desperate hunger, fingers clutching his shoulders like he might vanish if she loosened her grip. Every kiss tasted like goodbye. Every caress carried the weight of things she couldn't say. Tyler lost himself in her warmth. In a way, she whispered his name like a prayer. Don't leave, he breathed against her throat as dawn painted Houston pink. But when morning light filtered through hotel curtains, Denise was gone. No note, no number, nothing but the indent of her head on Egyptian cotton and the faint trace of her perfume on his shirt collar. Tyler searched the lounge, questioned other staff, even hired a private investigator. Denise Harper had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. The only proof of their night together was his business card, missing from his wallet. Ever made a choice in a moment of loneliness that changed everything? Sometimes one night can echo for years. Share if you've been there. What Tyler never knew was that Denise had stolen his business card before leaving. Not for romance, but because she discovered something about his company that could have destroyed him. She chose to disappear instead. 3 women, 1 man, 1 child, and a truth that would rewrite all their stories. The restaurant's warm lighting couldn't soften the sharp edges of recognition cutting through the air. 3 adults formed a triangle around one small girl who held a wilted rose, unaware she'd just detonated a bomb. Aaliyah's legs felt unsteady as memories crashed through her mind. Denise Martinez, her roommate during second year at Emory Law. The girl who'd helped her study constitutional law, who'd braided her hair before job interviews, who'd disappeared from their shared apartment one Tuesday morning without explanation. Denise, Aaliyah's voice cracked like aged paper. The woman standing in the restaurant doorway had changed. Gone was the uncertain law student with dreams bigger than her bank account. This Denise moved with the careful control of someone who'd learned to expect disaster. But those green eyes remained the same. Haunted, guarded, beautiful. Hello, Aaliyah. Denise's voice carried 7 years of distance. Her hand rested protectively on the little girl's shoulder. I knew this day would come eventually. Tyler stepped forward, confusion and recognition warring across his face. The woman from Houston stood before him, no longer wearing a waitress uniform, but still carrying that mysterious sadness that had drawn him to her. I remember you, he said slowly. The lounge in Houston. Mommy, the little girl, Maya, looked between the adults with growing concern. Why is everyone acting weird? Denise knelt beside her daughter, smoothing dark curls with gentle fingers. Baby, remember how I told you that sometimes grown-ups have complicated histories? This is one of those times. Aaliyah's mind raced, connecting dots she wished she couldn't see. Her college roommate, Tyler's business trip to Houston, a child who called him daddy. The timeline aligned with sickening precision. You two know each other? Tyler's voice carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. We were roommates in law school, Aaliyah managed. Before she stopped, unable to finish the sentence that ended with abandonment and unanswered questions. The memory of their last night together flooded Aaliyah's thoughts. Passionate lovemaking in their shared apartment. Tyler's hands mapping every curve of her body while she whispered promises about their future. Now that intimacy felt tainted by the presence of a child who might share his DNA. I can explain everything, Denise said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. But not here. Not like this. Other diners had begun to notice the tension. Whispers spread through the elegant space like wildfire. Tyler's carefully planned evening was dissolving into public spectacle. Maya tugged on her mother's dress. Mommy, I'm scared. Why is the pretty lady crying? Aaliyah hadn't realized tears were falling until small fingers pointed out her emotional state. She wiped her cheeks with shaking hands, trying to maintain composure while her world crumbled. What's worse, finding out your partner has a secret child, or discovering it through someone from your own past? Comment below with your thoughts. The restaurant manager appeared, clearly uncomfortable with the drama unfolding in his establishment. Ladies, gentlemen, perhaps we could. We're leaving, Tyler said firmly. He placed protective hands on both women, surprising everyone, including himself. All of us. We need to talk, and we're going to do it privately. As they moved toward the exit, Denise stepped closer to Aaliyah, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper that only her former roommate could hear. I never told him about Maya because I was protecting all of us. But now you need to know the real reason I disappeared. College roommates share everything, except the secrets that could destroy each other's futures. 7 years earlier, Emory Law School buzzed with the intensity of dreams being forged into reality. Their shared dorm room buzzed with late-night study sessions and whisper dreams. Law textbooks created fortress walls around their desks, while coffee stains mapped the territory of their friendship. Aaliyah Davis and Denise Martinez had been randomly assigned as roommates, but friendship developed with the intensity that comes from surviving law school together. Aaliyah, the scholarship kid from Atlanta's rough side, brought street smarts and determination. Denise, the small-town Texas girl, contributed sharp analytical skills and an uncanny ability to see through people's lies. Professor Williams is staring at you again, Denise whispered during constitutional law. Her notebook remained focused on judicial review, but her eyes tracked their professor's obvious interest in her roommate. Aaliyah flushed, pretending not to notice how Professor Marcus Williams lingered near her desk during office hours, how his compliments on her legal briefs carried undertones that had nothing to do with academics. At 38, he was handsome in that distinguished way that made smart women make stupid decisions. He's just being encouraging, Aaliyah insisted, but her voice carried doubt. Encouraging doesn't involve looking at your legs during lectures, Denise replied dryly. Be careful, Aaliyah. Men like him see women like us as conquests, not equals. But Aaliyah was 22 and brilliant and tired of being careful. When Professor Williams invited her to review case law over dinner, she accepted. When dinner led to wine, she allowed it. When wine led to his downtown apartment, she followed. Their affair began with intellectual discussions and evolved into something that felt like sophisticated romance. Williams quoted legal precedents between kisses, discussed Supreme Court decisions while trailing fingers along her collarbone. For a young woman who'd never been courted by someone of his caliber, the attention felt intoxicating. Denise watched her roommate transform, designer clothes replacing thrift store finds, expensive dinners replacing cafeteria meals. Aaliyah glowed with the confidence that comes from being chosen by someone powerful, but Denise saw shadows too. "He's grooming you," Denise said one night, watching Aaliyah return from another study session with bruised lips and wrinkled clothes. "This isn't love, it's manipulation." "You're jealous," Aaliyah snapped, defensive walls rising. "Just because you can't get a date doesn't mean you should sabotage my relationship." The words hit like physical blows. Denise absorbed them without flinching, but something shifted in her eyes. Trust, once freely given, began to withdraw. What neither woman knew was that Professor Williams had noticed Denise too. Her quiet intelligence, her protective loyalty, her refusal to be impressed by his status. While he seduced Aaliyah, he studied Denise, waiting for the right moment to add her to his collection. That moment came 3 weeks before final exams. Aaliyah had gone home to visit sick family, leaving Denise alone with deadlines and desperation. Williams offered to help with her constitutional law research, suggested they work in his office after hours. The assault happened quickly, clinically. No romantic pretense, no gentle seduction. Just power exercised over someone he perceived as powerless. Denise fought, but law professors carry more weight than struggling students. Afterward, he straightened his tie and informed her that no one would believe her word against his. "Your roommate certainly wouldn't," he added with casual cruelty. "She thinks you're jealous of our relationship. Who would she believe? Her beloved mentor or the bitter roommate trying to destroy her happiness?" Denise never told Aaliyah what happened. Instead, she withdrew, became distant, started missing classes. When she discovered she was pregnant 6 weeks later, the decision to leave felt inevitable. She packed while Aaliyah was in class, leaving only a note that explained nothing. "I have to go. It's not about you. Please don't try to find me." Have you ever had a close friend vanish from your life without explanation? Years later, did you ever discover why? Share your story below. The truth Denise finally spoke in that restaurant made Aaliyah's knees buckle. "I left law school because I was pregnant. But Maya's father wasn't some random guy. He was your professor, the one you were sleeping with. I saw him with you first." The worst betrayals come dressed as coincidences. The private dining room felt smaller with each revelation, elegant walls closing in like a beautiful prison. Even the jazz band seemed to play in minor keys now. Tyler had secured them privacy in Celestial's executive dining room, away from curious eyes and whispering voices. Maya sat coloring with crayons the restaurant manager had provided, innocently creating art while the adults around her processed earth-shattering revelations. Aaliyah's hands shook as memories she'd buried came flooding back. Professor Marcus Williams, the man who'd made her feel sophisticated and chosen. The relationship she'd hidden from family and friends, convinced it was mature love rather than predatory manipulation. "You were sleeping with Professor Williams," Denise continued, her voice steady despite the pain it carried. "I saw you leaving his office that Tuesday night. Saw him kiss you by the parking garage. You looked so happy. I thought I was in love," Aaliyah whispered, the words tasting like poison. "He made me feel special, important." Tyler's jaw tightened as he processed this information. His girlfriend's past with an older authority figure triggered every protective instinct he possessed. "How old were you?" 22. He was 38. Aaliyah's voice cracked with remembered vulnerability. "I thought I was so sophisticated, so mature. But looking back, you were young and brilliant, and he used that against you," Denise said firmly. "Just like he used it against me." The room went silent except for Maya's crayon scratching across paper. Tyler leaned forward, recognizing something important in Denise's tone. "What did he do to you?" Denise glanced at her daughter, ensuring the child remained focused on her artwork. 3 weeks before finals, when Aaliyah went home for family emergency, Williams offered to help with my constitutional law research. Said we could work in his office after hours. Even without details, Aaliyah understood. Her face went white as realization crashed over her. "Oh God, Denise. I'm so sorry. If I had known." "You couldn't have known. That was the point." Denise's voice carried years of therapy and hard-won healing. "You planned it that way. Made sure I'd never tell you because you'd think I was trying to destroy your relationship out of jealousy." Tyler's hands clenched into fists. Violence wasn't his nature, but the thought of this man hurting both women triggered something primal. "Where is he now?" "Teaching at USC, Denise replied. "Still collecting young women who think they're special." "Maya, and I moved to California 2 years ago. I couldn't stay away forever. I needed her to know this city, these opportunities." Aaliyah's memory of her last intimate encounter with Williams now felt contaminated. She remembered his hands on her body, his whispered praise for her intelligence, the way he'd made her feel grown up and desired. All of it built on lies and manipulation. The timing, Tyler said slowly, mathematical mind working through dates. "Maya is 6, born 9 months after I left Atlanta." Denise's admission hung heavy in perfumed air. Maya looked up from her coloring, sensing adult tension despite their careful voices. "Mommy, are you sad?" "You look sad." Denise smoothed her daughter's hair with infinite gentleness. "Sometimes grown-ups have to talk about difficult things, baby. But everything's okay. We're safe." The word safe carried weight that made Tyler's chest tighten. This child, William's child, had grown up knowing her father was someone to be feared rather than loved. Sometimes our past mistakes echo in ways we never expect. Have you ever had to face consequences years later? Tell me in the comments. Tyler's phone buzzed with incoming text. He glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. "Wait, Professor Williams? I know that name." His voice dropped to whisper. "He's my business partner's brother. He's been asking about you for years." The words hit like physical blows. Aaliyah's wine glass slipped from nerveless fingers, joining the shattered champagne flute in a symphony of broken crystal. 6 degrees of separation becomes 0 degrees of devastation. Tyler's phone buzzed again, the sound cutting through stunned silence like a knife. Professor Marcus Williams' name flashed on the screen, and everyone in the room froze. The coincidence felt too calculated, too perfect to be random. "Don't answer it," Aaliyah whispered, but Tyler was already swiping to accept. "Williams." Tyler's voice carried forced calm as he put the phone on speaker. "Kind of late for business calls." "Tyler, my friend." Williams' voice oozed through the speaker with practiced charm. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I was just thinking about our conversation last week, about that lovely attorney you're dating. Aaliyah Davis, wasn't it?" The city lights below seemed to mock them now. Each window a potential secret, each building hiding another connection they'd never suspected. Denise grabbed Maya's hand, pulling her daughter closer. The little girl looked confused by the sudden tension, crayon still clutched in small fingers. "Mommy? Who's that man?" "Nobody important, baby," Denise lied, but her voice shook. Tyler's business mind raced through conversations, trying to remember what he'd shared about his personal life. Williams had always asked casual questions about his relationships, seeming like friendly interest rather than calculated information gathering. "You there, Tyler?" Williams continued. "I was hoping we could arrange a meeting soon. There's a business opportunity I'd like to discuss, something involving community outreach and legal services. Right up your lady's alley, I'd imagine." Aaliyah felt sick. The way Williams said, "your lady," carried possession that made her skin crawl. Even through the phone, she could hear the smile in his voice, the satisfaction of a hunter closing in on prey. "How did you know where we were?" Tyler asked, though he suspected the answer. "Lucky guess. The Celestial is your style. Expensive, romantic, perfect for special occasions." Besides, my brother mentioned you'd reserve the entire rooftop tonight. Big plans. Tyler's business partner, James Williams, had access to all his accounts, his schedules, his private information. The realization hit like a physical blow. How long had they been watching? How much did they know? Maya tugged on her mother's dress. Mommy, that voice sounds like the man from school. The one who said he was my daddy's friend. Every adult in the room went dead silent. Denise's face drained of color as she knelt beside her daughter. What man, baby? When did someone talk to you at school? The nice man with the fancy car. He said he knew my daddy and wanted to make sure I was okay. He gave me candy. Tyler's protective instincts exploded into action. A strange man approaching Maya at school, claiming to know her father, bringing gifts. Every parent's nightmare scenario played out in real time. Denise, Tyler said urgently, we need to call the police. But William's voice cut through their panic. Oh, I see you've met my girls. Took you long enough, Tyler. I've been orchestrating this reunion for months. The admission hung in the air like poison gas. Aaliyah grabbed the phone, her lawyer instincts overriding shock. This is harassment, Williams. Whatever game you're playing. Aaliyah. Her name rolled off his tongue like a caress that made her skin crawl. Still so beautiful when you're angry. I've missed our conversations. We never had conversations. You manipulated a naive student. William's laugh carried decades of practiced cruelty. That's not how I remember it. You came to my apartment willingly, stayed the night by choice. Your body certainly seemed eager enough. Tyler lunged for the phone, but Aaliyah held it steady. Her voice turned ice cold, channeling every ounce of professional authority she'd built since law school. Listen carefully, you sick bastard. If you've been stalking my stepdaughter. Stepdaughter? William's delight was audible. How fascinating. And here I thought Tyler was just sleeping with you. This is even better than I planned. How small is your world really? Ever discovered everyone you know is connected in ways you never imagined? Share your most shocking connection below. As Tyler reached for his phone to call security, it rang first in his hands. Professor Williams' name flashed on the screen, and Tyler's blood turned to ice as the voice continued without pause. I see you finally met my girls. Some men collect cars, others collect souls. Professor Williams collected the women who got away. The phone speaker crackled with malicious satisfaction, Williams' voice poisoning the romantic atmosphere like smoke contaminating clean air. You seem surprised, Tyler. Did you really think your little anniversary surprise was your own idea? Williams' laughter echoed through the private dining room. The restaurant reservation, the flower girl service, even the specific child assigned to your table, all carefully arranged. Tyler's hands shook as reality crashed over him. The vendor Aaliyah had chosen for the flower girl service, the one that worked with underprivileged kids. Williams had orchestrated everything. The romantic gesture Tyler thought he'd planned had been manipulated from the beginning. You're insane, Tyler said, voice barely controlled. I'm feral. Do you have any idea how long I've been watching Aaliyah? Tracking her career, her relationships, waiting for the right moment to bring her back in my life. Denise pulled Maya behind her, creating a physical barrier between her daughter and the phone speaker. The little girl pressed against her mother's legs, sensing danger even if she couldn't understand its source. 7 years, Williams continued, his voice taking on the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. 7 years of following her legal career, watching her build that quaint little non-profit practice in Atlanta. She always did have a bleeding heart for the underdog. Aaliyah's stomach churned as she realized the scope of his surveillance. You've been stalking me since law school. Stalking is such an ugly word. I prefer maintaining interest in promising former students. You're always my favorite, Aaliyah. So passionate, so idealistic. Even after you graduated and moved away, I couldn't quite let you go. The romantic evening Tyler had planned felt contaminated now. Every detail he'd thought was his own choice had been influenced by a man who viewed women as possessions to be collected and controlled. When I learned you were dating Tyler, I knew fate was giving me a second chance. My brother James has been quite helpful in providing information about your relationship. Business dinners are perfect opportunities for sharing personal details. Tyler's mind raced through conversations with his business partner. Casual questions about Aaliyah, suggestions about romantic gestures, even recommendations for restaurants and services. All of it had been feeding information back to Williams. "Maya," Williams called out, his voice shifting to fake warmth. "Are you there, sweetheart? Daddy's been looking forward to spending more time with you." Maya whimpered and pressed closer to her mother. Denise's voice turned fierce with protective rage. "You stay away from my daughter. You have no rights to her." "Actually, I have every right. Biological fathers have legal standing, especially when the mother has been deliberately keeping the child from him. The courts tend to favor stable, financially secure fathers over struggling single mothers." The threat was clear and calculated. Williams had money, connections, legal knowledge. He could make Denise's life hell through custody battles she couldn't afford to fight. Aaliyah's legal training kicked in, analyzing the situation with professional clarity. "You'll never get custody, not after what you did to her mother. Why allegedly did 7 years ago. Good luck proving that in court. Meanwhile, I have documentation showing Denise deliberately concealed my daughter's existence, depriving me of paternal rights. Which crime seems more provable?" Tyler watched the women he cared about being threatened by a man who treated human lives like chess pieces. Every protective instinct demanded action, but Williams held too many advantages: legal knowledge, financial resources, strategic planning. "Here's what's going to happen," Williams continued, his professorial tone now carrying absolute authority. "Tyler, you're going to step aside like a good businessman. Aaliyah, you're going to remember why we were so compatible. And Denise, you're going to stop running and accept that Maya needs her father in her life." Maya started crying, overwhelmed by adult tension she couldn't understand. Denise scooped her up, whispering comfort while glaring at the phone with pure hatred. "And if we refuse?" Aaliyah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Tyler's business depends on contracts with city officials I know personally. Your nonprofit relies on grants from foundations where I have significant influence. Denise works for a law firm where my recommendations carry considerable weight." Williams paused, letting the implications sink in. Cooperation benefits everyone. Resistance, well, that could prove quite costly. Have you ever realized someone was pulling strings in your life without your knowledge? The moment you discovered you weren't in control? Comment below. The line went quiet for a moment before Williams delivered his final blow. "Oh, and Tyler? Maya isn't your daughter. The DNA test I arranged 6 years ago proved that. She's mine, and I'm coming to collect both my girls. DNA doesn't lie, but people do. And sometimes the biggest lie is the one we tell ourselves." The elegant restaurant transformed into a battlefield, crystal and china weapons in a war none of them had chosen to fight. Tyler stared at the phone in his hand, Williams' words echoing like gunshots in the sudden silence. Maya wasn't his biological daughter. The moment of connection he'd felt when she called him Daddy, the protective instincts that had flared to life, all based on a lie he'd told himself. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice carried doubt. "She looks like me." Children often resemble the men their mothers want them to claim as fathers, Williams replied with clinical cruelty. It's remarkable how wishful thinking can create family resemblances where none exist. Denise sat heavily in the nearest chair, still clutching Maya against her chest. The little girl had stopped crying but remained pressed against her mother, sensing the emotional earthquake happening around her. "The DNA test," Aaliyah said, her lawyer mind focusing on facts. "When? How?" 6 years ago, shortly after Maya was born. I hired investigators to locate Denise, confirm paternity, and monitor the situation. The results were quite clear: 99.7% probability that I'm the biological father. Tyler felt like he was drowning. The connection he'd felt to Maya, the instant protective love that had surprised him with its intensity, all of it had been emotional manipulation, his mind creating bonds that didn't exist. "But she called me Daddy," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "Children are remarkably adaptable," Williams continued. "Show them kindness, and they'll attach to anyone. It doesn't mean anything more than basic human need for father figures. Aaliyah watched Tyler process this information, saw the pain and confusion written across his face. The man who'd planned a perfect anniversary was discovering that nothing in his life was what he believed. Denise finally found her voice, though it cracked with years of suppressed pain. I never told her about you because you're a monster. Maya doesn't need to know that her father is a rapist who destroys women for entertainment. Rape is such a strong word, Williams replied dismissively. What happened between us was a misunderstanding, an unfortunate encounter between two adults. The courts would call it he said, she said, especially after all these years. The courts would call it what it was, assault by a man in authority over a vulnerable student. Prove it. Find witnesses. Show evidence. William's confidence was absolute. Meanwhile, I have legal documentation of paternity and 6 years of you deliberately keeping my daughter from me. Which case seemed stronger? Tyler's business mind understood the strategic landscape Williams had created. Every move had been calculated to maximize his advantages while minimizing his victim's options. This wasn't emotional revenge. It was systematic psychological warfare. Maya stirred in her mother's arms, looking up at the adults with confusion and fear. Mommy, why is everyone fighting? Why does that man say he's my daddy? Denise's voice broke as she tried to explain the unexplainable. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated situations, baby. But no matter what happens, Mommy loves you more than anything in the world. What about Tyler? Maya asked with innocent directness. Does he love me too? Tyler felt his heart shatter and rebuild itself in the space of a single heartbeat. Biology didn't matter. Legal documents didn't matter. This child had called him daddy, had looked at him with trust and hope, had created a bond that no DNA test could break. Yes, he said firmly, meeting Maya's eyes. I love you very much. William's laughter cut through the tender moment like broken glass. How touching. But love doesn't override biology, Tyler. Maya is my daughter, and she's coming home with me. Aaliyah stood up, her body trembling with rage and determination. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Williams replied, his casual tone making the threat even more chilling. The silence that followed was broken by sirens in the distance. Someone in the restaurant had called police about the disturbance. William's voice became urgent. Think carefully about your next moves. I have resources you can't imagine, connections you can't match, and patience you can't outlast. Maya belongs with me, and Aaliyah knows where she belongs too. What would you do if you discovered your whole relationship was built on someone else's manipulation? Fight or flee? Tell me below. As sirens wailed in the distance, someone had called police about the disturbance. Maya tugged on Aaliyah's dress and whispered, "The mean man is here. He's been watching us through the window." When the predator finally shows his face, every woman becomes prey. The rooftop's romantic ambience shattered as Williams emerged from shadows, his presence turning candlelight into something menacing, roses into funeral flowers. Professor Marcus Williams looked exactly as Aaliyah remembered. Distinguished silver at his temples, expensive suit tailored to perfection, the kind of handsome that opened doors and lowered defenses. But now she saw what her 22-year-old self had missed. The cold calculation behind his smile, the predator's patience in his movements. "Surprise," he said, stepping fully into the light. "I thought it was time we had this conversation face to face." Tyler moved instinctively, placing himself between Williams and the women. At 42, he kept himself in good shape, but Williams carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. "Security," Tyler shouted, but Williams shook his head with amusement. "I own this building, Tyler. Well, the investment group I advise owns it. Amazing how many properties in this city are connected to my financial network." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Even Tyler's carefully chosen restaurant had been part of Williams' web. Every romantic gesture, every private moment had been orchestrated by a man who viewed their lives as his personal entertainment. Maya pressed against her mother's legs, whimpering softly. "Mummy, I'm scared. That's the man from school. William's attention shifted to his daughter with nauseating warmth. "Hello, Maya. Daddy's been looking forward to spending time with you." "You're not my daddy," Maya said with 6-year-old certainty. "Tyler is my daddy." The words hit Williams like a slap. His facade of control cracked, revealing the narcissistic rage underneath. "I'm your biological father, Maya. That man is nothing but a stranger who's been lying to you." "She's 6 years old," Denise said, her voice shaking with protective fury. "She doesn't understand biology. She understands who's been kind to her and who makes her afraid." Williams took another step closer, and every woman in the room felt their skin crawl. There was something wrong with his energy, something that set off every survival instinct evolution had given them. "Aaliyah," he said, his voice dropping to the intimate tone that had once made her feel special. "You've grown even more beautiful. Success suits you. Stay away from me." Aaliyah's lawyer training kept her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "We had something special once. You know we did. Those late nights in my office, discussing constitutional law and precedent. The way your mind worked, so sharp, so passionate." His eyes traveled over her body with obvious hunger. "I've missed our intellectual connection." Tyler's hands clenched into fists. Violence wasn't his nature, but the way Williams looked at Aaliyah triggered something primal and dangerous. "That wasn't connection," Aaliyah said firmly. "That was you manipulating a student who didn't know better." "I know better now." "Do you?" "Because from where I stand, you're still making poor choices. Trading intellectual stimulation for financial security. Settling for a man who sells cars instead of changing the world." The insult to Tyler was calculated and precise. Williams understood exactly how to wound both of them, questioning Aaliyah's judgment while diminishing Tyler's worth. But Tyler surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of taking the bait, he smiled. "You're right about one thing, Professor. I do sell cars, but I also know how to recognize a fraud when I see one. And you? You're a broken-down man who preys on women because you can't handle being with your equal." William's mask slipped completely, revealing the ugliness underneath. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Car salesman. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A coward who stalks women and terrifies children. The kind of man who has to use threats because he can't inspire genuine respect." The tension escalated as Williams stepped closer, his refined exterior completely dissolved. Restaurant staff had scattered, leaving them alone on the rooftop with the city spreading below like witness to their confrontation. "Maya is coming with me," Williams said, abandoning all pretense. "Tonight, I have legal documents prepared, custody papers that will hold up in any court. Denise forfeited her parental rights when she kidnapped my daughter 6 years ago." "I didn't kidnap anyone," Denise said, but her voice carried fear. "Legal battles required money she didn't have, connections she'd never possessed. When someone threatens people you love, how far would you go to protect them? What line wouldn't you cross? Share your thoughts." As police sirens grew closer, William smiled at Aaliyah with chilling calm. "You think this ends here? I own half this city's legal system. I'll have Maya within the week, and you'll beg to join us. In family court, money talks louder than motherhood. Until someone fights dirty enough to match." The courthouse marble echoed with clicking heels and whispered strategies while justice waited behind mahogany doors, scales balanced by whoever paid the most. 3 days after the restaurant confrontation, Aaliyah sat in her hotel room surrounded by legal documents, empty coffee cups, and the kind of determination that had gotten her through law school on scholarship money and pure stubbornness. Williams hadn't been bluffing about his connections. He'd filed for emergency custody within hours of their meeting. Tyler paced by the window, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated with private investigators, security firms, and anyone else who might help build their defense. His luxury car dealership could wait. Right now, protecting his chosen family mattered more than any business deal. Denise sat curled in the corner chair, Maya sleeping against her shoulder. The little girl hadn't slept well since meeting Williams, waking up crying from nightmares about the mean man taking her away from her mommy. "Judge Harrison is Williams' golf partner," Aaliyah reported, scanning through background research. Judge Martinez received a substantial donation to her re-election campaign from Williams Foundation. Judge Thompson's daughter got into USC Law School after Williams wrote her a recommendation letter. The system was rigged, and everyone knew it. Williams had spent years building relationships, placing allies, creating a network of influence that made fair hearings nearly impossible. Tyler ended his call and turned to face the women. Good news and bad news. The good news is my investigator found 3 former students willing to testify about Williams' pattern of harassment. The bad news is they're all terrified of retaliation. What kind of retaliation? Denise asked, though she suspected she knew. The kind that ruins careers before they start. Williams has connections at major law firms, corporations, government agencies. One bad word from him can destroy someone's professional future. This was how predators operated, not just through physical intimidation, but through systematic destruction of their victims' ability to fight back. Williams understood that most people couldn't afford to be heroes. Aaliyah stood up, her decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Then we don't fight fair. Tyler and Denise stared at her. The woman they'd known as ethical, principled, someone who believed in working within the system, was suggesting they abandon legal niceties. What do you mean? Tyler asked carefully. Williams has spent years building his network through blackmail, intimidation, and corruption. He's broken dozens of laws, but he's been careful to avoid consequences. We need to make him face those consequences. Aaliyah's fingers flew over her laptop keyboard, accessing databases and records that most people couldn't reach. Her nonprofit work had given her connections to investigative journalists, victim advocates, and law enforcement officers who specialized in cases like this. Here, she said, turning the screen toward them. Williams' tax records show donations to political campaigns that exceed legal limits. His university employment file has 3 sealed complaints that were mysteriously withdrawn. His divorce records mention concerning behavior toward female students that was sealed by court order. The pattern was clear once you knew how to look for it. Williams wasn't just a predator. He was a criminal who'd used wealth and influence to avoid accountability. Tyler leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she could feel his warmth and strength. The crisis had brought them closer rather than driving them apart, proving that their relationship could survive even Williams' calculated attacks. What do you need from me? Tyler asked, his voice carrying absolute commitment. Everything. Your business connections, your financial resources, your willingness to fight dirty against someone who's never faced real opposition. The intimate moment was interrupted by Maya stirring in her mother's arms. The little girl looked around with sleepy confusion before focusing on Tyler. Tyler, are you going to let the mean man take me away? Tyler knelt beside her chair, meeting her eyes with gentle honesty. Maya, I promise you that I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we're going to protect you. Even if you're not my real daddy? The question hung in the air like a prayer. Tyler took her small hands in his larger ones, feeling the trust and hope that no DNA test could measure. Maya, being someone's real daddy has nothing to do with biology. It's about love, protection, and being there when someone needs you. I love you. I will always protect you, and I will always be here when you need me. That makes me your real daddy in every way that matters. Maya smiled for the first time in 3 days, wrapping her arms around Tyler's neck in a hug that sealed their bond more permanently than any legal document. Have you ever had to fight a system designed to favor wealth over what's right? What did you stand up against impossible odds? Tell me your story. The private investigator Tyler hired delivered news that changed everything. Williams doesn't just want custody. He wants revenge. And he's been planning this for 7 years, since the night Aaliyah rejected his marriage proposal. Some rejections echo through time, transforming love into obsession and healing into revenge. The hotel room fell silent except for Maya's steady breathing and a distant hum of Los Angeles traffic. Tyler's investigator had delivered information that reframed everything they thought they knew about Williams' motivations. A marriage proposal? Aaliyah whispered, her voice barely audible. That's impossible. We never. 7 years ago, the night before you graduated from Emory Law, Tyler's investigator continued over speakerphone. Williams had dinner reservations at the most expensive restaurant in Atlanta. He'd purchased an engagement ring, 3 carats, custom setting. The receipt is in his personal files. Aaliyah sank into the nearest chair, memories she'd buried fighting their way to the surface. Their last dinner together, the way Williams had seemed nervous, almost excited. She'd attributed it to pride in her academic success, never suspecting he'd planned something more permanent. I ended things that night, she said slowly, pieces clicking into place. I told him I was moving to Atlanta to start my career, that whatever we'd had was over. He seemed to take it well. On the surface, the investigator replied, but his behavior changed dramatically afterward. He started asking about you constantly, tracking your career moves, even traveled to Atlanta multiple times in the months after graduation. Denise shifted Maya to her other arm, careful not to wake her sleeping daughter. You're saying he's been stalking Aaliyah for 7 years because she refused to marry him? Not just stalking, planning. Williams is a strategist. He thinks in long-term campaigns. When direct pursuit failed, he changed tactics. He began positioning himself to intersect with your life in ways that would seem natural, inevitable. Tyler paced to the window, watching city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. The business partnership with my company. He specifically requested to work with me after learning I was dating Aaliyah. His brother James didn't randomly connect with your dealership, the investigator confirmed. Williams researched every man Aaliyah dated seriously. When your relationship lasted longer than 6 months, he began orchestrating ways to insert himself into your business circles. The manipulation ran deeper than any of them had realized. Williams hadn't just been watching. He'd been actively shaping circumstances to bring him back into Aaliyah's life. Every coincidence had been carefully manufactured. The flower girl service, Aaliyah said with growing horror. He didn't just arrange for Maya to be assigned to our table. He created the entire situation. He's been tracking Denise and Maya for 2 years, ever since they moved to California. He knew about Maya's participation in the youth program, knew which events she'd be working. The anniversary dinner was just the perfect opportunity to force a confrontation. Maya stirred in her mother's arms, murmuring sleepily. Even in sleep, she seemed to sense the adult tension surrounding her. Denise hummed softly, a lullaby that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Tyler turned back to face the group, his jaw set with determination. What else did you find? Williams has been systematically destroying any man who gets close to Aaliyah. Her last serious relationship ended when her boyfriend mysteriously lost his job after Williams made certain phone calls. The one before that received anonymous tips to the IRS that triggered an audit he couldn't survive. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Aaliyah's romantic life hadn't been affected by bad luck or poor judgment. It had been sabotaged by a man who viewed her as property to be claimed. He's not just obsessed, she whispered. He's possessive to the point of delusion. There's more. Williams has been setting up legal and financial traps designed to force you into dependence on him. The grant your nonprofit applied for last year? His foundation controls the approval process. They've been stringing you along, creating artificial financial pressure. The web of manipulation was so extensive, it took her breath away. Williams hadn't just been watching her life. He'd been controlling it, creating problems he could solve, manufacturing crises that would drive her toward him. Tyler sat beside Aaliyah, taking her hand in his. We're going to stop him. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we're going to end this. Have you ever discovered someone was controlling your life from the shadows? That your struggles weren't random, but manufactured? Share your story below. As Maya woke up and asked for water, none of them noticed the figure watching from the building across the street. Williams had found their hotel, and he was already planning his next move. When the system fails victims, sometimes victims have to break the system. The war room they created in Tyler's penthouse looked like controlled chaos. Documents scattered across every surface, laptops glowing with research, phones buzzing with updates from private investigators across 3 states. Maya slept peacefully in the guest bedroom, unaware that her future was being decided by legal strategies and moral compromises. Aaliyah stood before a wall covered in photos, documents, and red thread connecting William's network of influence. Her nonprofit experience had taught her to see patterns, to track money flows and power structures. Now she was using those skills to map the enemy territory. 17 women, she announced to Tyler and Denise. 17 former students who filed complaints against Williams over the past 15 years. All sealed, all settled out of court, all buried. Tyler looked up from his laptop, where he'd been analyzing Williams' financial records. How did you get access to sealed court documents? I have friends who believe in justice more than they believe in procedure. Aaliyah's smile carried edges sharp enough to cut glass. When the system protects predators, sometimes you have to work around the system. The ethical line she'd crossed would have horrified her law school professors, but desperate times demanded desperate measures. Williams had corrupted the legal system. Fighting him required matching his willingness to bend rules. Denise sat surrounded by employment records, financial documents, and witness statements they'd gathered through Tyler's network of private investigators. He's been paying women to disappear, not just settlements, ongoing payments contingent on their silence. Hush money disguised as consulting fees, Tyler added, his business experience recognizing the pattern immediately. He pays them through shell companies, makes it look legitimate on tax returns. But the contracts all contain clauses about maintaining confidentiality regarding previous employment interactions. It was blackmail dressed up as business transactions. Williams kept his victims trapped in financial dependence while ensuring their silence about his crimes. The strategy was brilliant in its cruelty. Maya's voice drifted from the guest bedroom. She was having another nightmare, crying for her mommy in words muffled by sleep and fear. Denise started to rise, but Tyler was already moving. "I've got her," he said softly, disappearing into the bedroom. Through the open doorway, they could hear Tyler's gentle voice calming Maya's fears, promising her safety, singing the lullaby Denise had taught him. The sound of Tyler becoming a father in real time brought tears to both women's eyes. "He loves her," Denise whispered, watching Tyler's silhouette against the nightlight's glow. "More than her biological father ever could." "Biology doesn't make someone a parent," Aaliyah replied. "Choice does. Commitment does. Love does." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Williams claimed paternal rights based on DNA, while displaying none of the protective instincts that actually defined fatherhood. Tyler had no biological connection to Maya, but he'd proven his devotion in ways that mattered. Tyler returned to the living room after settling Maya back to sleep. She asked if the mean man could hurt her here. "I promised her he couldn't, but we need to make sure that's true." "It will be true," Aaliyah said with quiet determination. "Because we're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're going to destroy him." The transformation in her voice made both Tyler and Denise look up. This wasn't the idealistic nonprofit lawyer they'd known. This was someone who'd been pushed too far and decided to push back. "What are you thinking?" Tyler asked carefully. "Williams has built his empire on secrets and silence. What happens when those secrets become public? When his victims realize they're not alone, that there are others who can corroborate their stories?" Aaliyah turned to face them fully, her expression carrying the kind of calm that comes before storms. "We're going to give every woman he's hurt the power to speak without fear. And we're going to make sure their voices are heard by everyone who matters." "That's dangerous," Denise warned. "He'll retaliate. He'll try to destroy all of us. He's already trying to destroy us. The difference is, now we're going to fight back with the same ruthlessness he's used against his victims." Tyler studied the woman he loved, recognizing something fundamental had shifted. The idealistic lawyer was still there, but she'd been joined by someone harder, someone willing to use William's own weapons against him. "What do you need from me?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would require everything he had. "Your money, your connections, and your willingness to risk everything for people you barely know. Because this isn't just about Maya anymore. It's about every woman he's hurt and every woman he might hurt in the future." Sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to become something more dangerous than they are. Have you ever had to sacrifice your principles to protect someone you love? Share your thoughts below. As Aaliyah outlined her plan for systematic exposure of Williams' crimes, none of them noticed the listening device Williams had planted in Tyler's penthouse. He'd been preparing for their counterattack since the day they'd met. The truth has a way of spreading like wildfire, burning down lies that took years to build. The press conference exploded across social media faster than anyone had anticipated. Within hours of Aaliyah's carefully planned revelation, Williams' name was trending nationwide, his photo displayed alongside accusations that made headline news from coast to coast. The downtown Los Angeles hotel conference room had been packed with reporters, victim advocates, and law enforcement officials. Aaliyah stood at the podium wearing a navy suit that projected professional authority, flanked by 17 women whose silence Williams had purchased with money and fear. Professor Marcus Williams has spent 15 years using his position of authority to sexually assault students, then systematically silencing his victims through financial manipulation and legal intimidation. Aaliyah's voice carried clearly through the microphone, each word chosen for maximum impact. Behind her, a screen displayed documents, financial records, and testimony that painted a picture of predatory behavior spanning multiple universities. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, devastating. Tyler watched from the back of the room, Maya sleeping against his chest while Denise stood beside them. Security guards provided by Tyler's private firm formed a protective barrier around the family Williams was trying to destroy. Sarah Chun, Williams' first known victim from his early teaching days at UCLA, stepped to the microphone with hands that barely trembled. I was 19 when Professor Williams assaulted me in his office. When I tried to report it, he convinced me that no one would believe a struggling scholarship student over a respected professor. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. For 12 years, I've received monthly payments disguised as consulting fees, with contracts requiring my silence about what he did. Today, I'm breaking that silence. One by one, Williams' victims share their stories. The pattern was consistent. Young women in vulnerable positions, assault disguised as mentorship, silence purchased through financial dependency, and professional threats. The systematic nature of his crimes became impossible to ignore. Williams himself sat in his USC office watching the press conference on live television, his usually perfect composure cracking as his carefully constructed world collapsed in real time. 17 accusers were harder to discredit than one or two. Financial records were harder to deny than verbal testimony. Pattern evidence was nearly impossible to defend against. His phone rang constantly. University administrators, business partners, political connections, all wanting explanations he couldn't provide. The network of influence he'd spent years building was abandoning him as quickly as scandal could spread. At the press conference, Aaliyah stepped back to the microphone for closing remarks. Professor Williams believed he could control women through fear, silence, and financial manipulation. Today, we prove that survivors are stronger than predators when they stand together. The room erupted in applause that felt like thunder. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and somewhere in the chaos, justice took its first real breath in 15 years. But Williams wasn't finished. His response came within hours. A carefully crafted statement claiming the accusations were part of a coordinated attack by disgruntled former students in a vindictive ex-girlfriend seeking financial gain. He portrayed himself as the victim of a modern witch hunt designed to destroy successful men. These women are being manipulated by lawyers seeking publicity and money, his statement read. I have always conducted myself with the highest professional standards, and I will vigorously defend my reputation against these false accusations. The counter-narrative might have worked in another era, before social media made secrets harder to keep. But the evidence was too extensive, the testimonies too consistent, the pattern too clear. Williams' denials only drew more attention to the accusations. Tyler's phone buzzed with updates from his security team. Williams just left his office with 2 suitcases. He's heading toward LAX airport. He's running, Aaliyah said with grim satisfaction. That's as good as an admission of guilt. But Tyler knew Williams better than that. Men like him didn't run. They regrouped, they planned, they struck back when their enemies least expected it. This isn't over, Tyler warned, adjusting Maya's weight against his chest. The little girl had slept through the entire press conference, peaceful in the safety of his arms. Williams won't just disappear. He'll try to take us down with him. As if summoned by Tyler's words, Aaliyah's phone rang. The caller ID showed Williams' number, and everyone in the room went silent. Answer it, Denise urged. Let's hear what he has to say. When bad men realize they're losing everything, how far will they go for revenge? What would you do if someone threatened your family? Tell me below. Aaliyah put the phone on speaker, and Williams' voice filled the room with ice-cold fury. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. I'll destroy everyone you've ever loved, starting with that precious little girl. Desperate men make desperate choices, and some choices can't be undone. The hotel suite had been transformed into a fortress, with security personnel stationed at every entrance and electronic surveillance monitoring every approach. Williams' threat had been specific enough to take seriously, vague enough to make protection nearly impossible. Maya played with coloring books on the living room floor, surrounded by bodyguards who'd been trained to look like friendly uncles rather than armed security. She remained unaware that her safety required such extreme measures, innocent in the way only children can be. Tyler paced by the windows, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated with FBI agents, local police, and private security firms. Williams' threat against Maya had triggered federal involvement. Threatening a child across state lines made this more than a local matter. He's liquidating assets, Tyler reported after ending his latest call. Offshore accounts, property sales, cryptocurrency transfers. Williams is preparing to disappear permanently. Aaliyah looked up from her laptop, where she'd been monitoring news coverage of the scandal, where he's gathering resources for something bigger. Men like Williams don't just vanish. They go out making as much damage as possible. The press conference had triggered an avalanche of consequences Williams couldn't control. USC had placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. The district attorney had opened a criminal inquiry. Professional associations were reviewing his memberships. His carefully constructed life was crumbling faster than he could manage. But cornered predators were often the most dangerous. Denise sat beside Maya, helping her color while keeping one eye on the security monitors Tyler had installed throughout the suite. What if we just left? Disappeared the way I did before? Williams can't hurt us if he can't find us. He found you once, Tyler replied gently. He'll find you again. And next time, we might not be prepared. The doorbell chimed, followed immediately by security reporting an FBI agent requesting entry. Tyler nodded approval, and Agent Sarah Martinez entered carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of someone delivering bad news. Williams boarded a private jet 3 hours ago, she announced without preamble. Flight plan filed for the Cayman Islands, but the plane never arrived at its destination. We lost radar contact somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico. The room went silent except for Maya's innocent humming as she colored. The adults processed what Agent Martinez was implying. Williams had either crashed or deliberately vanished in a way that would be nearly impossible to track. You think he's dead? Aaliyah asked. I think he's smart enough to stage his own death if it serves his purposes, Agent Martinez replied. Williams has been planning this for months, maybe years. Offshore accounts, false identities, safe houses. He's been preparing for the possibility that his crimes would catch up with him. Tyler felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What does that mean for Maya's safety? If Williams is dead, she's safe. If he's not, Agent Martinez didn't need to finish the sentence. Maya looked up from her coloring, sensing adult tension despite their careful voices. Tyler, are we still in danger from the mean man? Tyler knelt beside her, meeting her eyes with the honesty she deserved. Maybe, sweetheart, but you're surrounded by people who love you and will keep you safe no matter what happens. What if he comes back? The question hung in the air Like a prayer, none of them wanted to answer. Tyler gathered Maya into his arms, feeling the weight of promises he might not be able to keep. Then we'll be ready for him, he said firmly, and we'll show him that families protect each other. Agent Martinez opened her briefcase, revealing surveillance photos and documents. There's something else you need to know. Williams wasn't working alone. He had help, financial backing, logistical support, connections we're still trying to identify. The revelation hit like cold water. Williams' network of influence hadn't just been professional relationships. He'd been part of something larger, more organized, more dangerous than they'd realized. What kind of help? Denise asked, though her voice suggested she didn't want to know the answer. The kind that doesn't disappear just because Williams is gone. The kind that might continue his work for reasons we don't fully understand yet. Aaliyah's lawyer mind immediately grasped the implications. You're saying this isn't over. Even if Williams is dead, the threat continues. I'm saying you should remain vigilant. Williams may have been the face of this operation, but he wasn't necessarily the brain. When you realize the monster you've been fighting has friends in dark places, how do you find the courage to keep fighting? Share your thoughts below. As Agent Martinez prepared to leave, her phone buzzed with an urgent message. Her face went pale as she read the screen. Williams' plane has been found. Empty. And there's a message carved into the pilot's seat. The game isn't over. Some endings are really beginnings in disguise, and some families are built from choice rather than blood. 6 months later, Maya's laughter echoed through the garden of their new home in Portland, Oregon, far enough from Los Angeles to feel safe, close enough to civilization to build new lives. The little girl chased butterflies between rose bushes while Tyler grilled burgers, and Aaliyah helped Denise plant herbs in the raised garden beds they'd built together. The house was smaller than Tyler's penthouse, more modest than his Arizona mansion, but it felt like home in ways his other properties never had. Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator, family photos lined the hallways, and the sound of genuine laughter-filled spaces that had once echoed with loneliness. Williams had never been found. His plane had been discovered floating empty in the Gulf of Mexico, but no body was ever recovered. The FBI investigation continued, but Agent Martinez privately believed he'd staged his own death and disappeared into whatever network had been supporting him. For the first month after the press conference, they'd lived with constant security, jumping at every unexpected sound, checking locks multiple times before bed. But as weeks passed without incident, they'd gradually allowed themselves to believe they might actually be safe. Maya had adapted to her new life with the resilience only children possess. She attended a small private school where teachers knew to watch for strangers, lived in a house with security systems Tyler had personally designed, and was loved by 3 adults who would die before letting anyone hurt her. Daddy Tyler, Maya called from the garden, using the name that had stuck despite everything they'd learned about biology and DNA. Come see what I found. Tyler set down his spatula and joined her by the flower beds, where she'd discovered a cocoon attached to one of the rose stems. What do you think is inside? He asked, kneeling to examine her discovery. A butterfly, Maya announced with 6-year-old certainty. Mommy says things that look dead sometimes aren't really dead. They're just changing into something better. The wisdom of children cuts straight to the heart of things adults complicated with analysis and fear. Tyler hugged her close, marveling at how this little girl had transformed his understanding of love, family, and purpose. Aaliyah approached carrying a pitcher of iced tea, her engagement ring catching sunlight as she moved. Tyler had proposed 3 months ago, not with champagne and chandeliers this time, but with Maya's help in their own backyard, surrounded by people who'd chosen to become family. Any word from the attorneys? Tyler asked as Aaliyah settled beside them on the garden bench. Williams' victims received their settlement payments this morning. The university agreed to establish a fund for survivors, and his assets are being liquidated to fund victim services nationwide. Even in disappearance, Williams' crimes had consequences that would help other women. His exposed network had led to investigations at 3 other universities, resulting in additional arrests and policy changes designed to protect students. Denise emerged from the house, carrying Maya's adoption papers, the final step in making their unconventional family legally official. Tyler would become Maya's father in every way that mattered, with Denise's full support and Maya's enthusiastic approval. "Ready for this?" Denise asked, holding up the documents that would change their lives forever. Tyler looked around at the garden they'd built together, the home they'd created, the child who'd called him daddy from the moment they'd met. "I've been ready since the night she first looked at me and saw someone worth trusting." The signing ceremony was small and private, just family, witnessed by Agent Martinez, who'd become a friend during the months of investigation. Maya signed her name in careful 6-year-old handwriting, making her adoption official with the same seriousness she'd shown choosing her new bedroom colors. As evenings settled over their garden, they gathered on the back porch to watch fireflies dance between the flowers. Maya fell asleep in Tyler's arms while Aaliyah and Denise planned the nonprofit organization they were starting together, a legal aid service for victims of academic sexual assault. "Do you think Williams is really dead?" Denise asked quietly, voicing the question they all carried but rarely spoke aloud. "I think it doesn't matter anymore," Aaliyah replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. "He wanted to destroy our lives, but instead he brought us together. He wanted to isolate us, but instead he taught us we're stronger united than we ever were alone." Tyler adjusted Maya's weight against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing and the trust that came with it. "Some people spend their whole lives looking for family. We found each other because someone tried to hurt us. Maybe that's how the best families are made. Not from perfect circumstances, but from people choosing to protect each other no matter what." The fireflies continued their dance as darkness settled around the porch. 3 adults and 1 sleeping child creating their own small circle of light against whatever shadows might be watching for beyond. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things we never expected. Have you ever found unexpected family in the aftermath of trauma? Share your story. You never know who needs to hear it. The last thing Maya whispered before falling completely asleep was, "I'm glad the mean man brought us together. Now we're a real family forever." And somewhere in the distance, barely visible against the tree line, a figure watched the house before disappearing back into darkness. Some games take longer to finish than others. The end.